So the National Hurling League commences this weekend, and today we're going to be looking at the Limerick senior hurlers and what can be said about Limerick that hasn't been said already, because they are by far and away the dominant force in the sport of hurling at the minute. 3 All-Irelands in the last 4 years, 3 Munster titles in a row, 2 National Leagues in the last 4 seasons as well. It has been absolutely exceptional stuff from this Limerick team. And I was delighted to speak with freelance GAA journalist John Keogh for today's preview, where they look in depth all things Limerick ahead of the 2022 GAA season. We touch on, well, the dominant years of the last couple of years for Limerick hurling. I suppose the turning points really from John Keogh's appointment in 2017 and Paul Kinnerk coming in, how Limerick have turned the tide really from the years of disappointment pre-2018, and we also touch on last year's big success as well against Cork, the turnaround versus Tipperary, the comparison between the Limerick hurlers and that great Dublin football team of recent seasons as well. And we touch on this year, can anyone stop Limerick in 2021, and what new players might be coming into the team. So if you could leave a like and subscribe on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, if you could give the podcast a rating, I would really much appreciate it. It does help the podcast grow and get more notice to more people. So I'd very much appreciate that. And enjoy the podcast, and let's get into it.
Well, nowadays you got to have that, because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so it's the Limerick Season Preview, and I'm delighted to be joined here by freelance GAA journalist John Keogh. I suppose, John, first of all, how's the form? You're buzzing anyway as a Limerick man at the minute?
Yeah, things are all good down around here at the moment, Aaron. 3 All-Irelands in 4 years, few Munsters, few National Leagues, pre-season win with the majority of the All-Ireland winners out. Things are fairly rosy down here at the moment. We're not going to complain yet anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible journey really the past few years. Like, I mean, you were saying there, like 3 All-Irelands in 4 years, but obviously you had that long drought before that 2018 success. So, I mean, it's been an incredible journey really the last few years. Yeah,
it has. Yeah, the journey is the right word. You had 45 years of hurt, for want of a better word. You had 4 or 5 All-Ireland defeats in that time. Obviously 2 in the 90s, 1980, 1974 as well, and 2007 to that great Kilkenny team as well. And look, a lot of work was done behind the scenes with the setting up of the academy, lifting the treaty document as it was then back in 2010, I think it was, after some bad couple of years. Well, Justin McCarthy debacle, people remember, and a fairly unmerciful hammering by Tip in a game up in Cork Park that will certainly still, despite all the success, live long in Limerick fans' memories. But yeah, the way things have gone in the last few years, there was a bit of underage success, winning minors, getting to All-Ireland finals, obviously 2 under-21 wins as well, but not able to win a minor All-Ireland. But getting to that level was something Limerick hadn't done in a long time. Frequently, they'd done hit the odd time here and there, but everyone talks about the 3 All-Irelands at the turn of the century at under 21 level that didn't really transfer to senior. But thankfully, the ones in 21 and 17 transferred very quickly to 3 senior All-Irelands. And the majority of them players have come through as well, which isn't always the case.
Yeah, and did you ever see those days coming really in the last 5 or 10 years? Because I suppose from a neutral point of view, really, like the 2018 All-Ireland success definitely did catch, I suppose, a lot of neutrals, including myself, probably by surprise, because, yeah, you did have that 2017 under-20 success, but as we've seen before, that success doesn't always transfer into the senior team. So, like, could you see maybe 5-10 years ago, like when some of the resources were going in and some of the infrastructures were being built at Limerick, where potentially on the rise and could maybe become the dominant force in hurling?
No, I'd be lying if I said I could. And I think the majority of Limerick fans and people involved in covering Limerick GAA would be lying if they said they saw this coming. What I will say is I think they got a lot of good things in place when they got John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk. Like, John Keogh had obviously underage success with the 21s in 2015. He'd been with John Allen in 2013 as well, when Limerick had won a Munster for the first time since 96. You know, a selector in that team would have learned a lot off John Allen, I think. You know, but him and Kinnerk really, and they've good background people that have been there. Brian Geary was there for the first All-Ireland, Donald O'Grady, Alan Cunningham, Angus O'Brien. Obviously, Caroline Curran has been mentioned an awful lot. Joe O'Connor from the physical side of things, and Mikey Kiely as well in recent years. You know, but they had the right people in place to harness the talent that was coming through. But 2018, you know, like that win over Kilkenny in the quarter-final, Limerick hadn't beaten Kilkenny in an All-Ireland series since 73, you know, so that was a huge, that epic game at Cork in the semi-final. So there was momentum certainly in 18, but if you just look back to John Keogh's previous year in charge, there was a semi-final defeat to Galway in the league at the Gaelic grounds. I think it was a semi-final league defeat or quarter-final anyway. And Galway just blew them away. Physically, hurling-wise, just blew them away. And Limerick lost to Clare and Kilkenny, and that was it in 2017, the year before they won their first All-Ireland, you know. And the Clare game was just a very, very poor performance, but they had an awful amount of wides, which is at times a symptom of this Limerick team anyway. But they had an awful lot of wides in that game, missed chances that they felt they could have beaten Kilkenny and Nolan Park. So there was that bit of confidence going into 18, but not to the level that has happened. And then, you know, since then we've kind of got greedy, going, okay, you look at 19 in a game against Kilkenny where Kilkenny blew them out of the water straight away up in Croke Park in the All-Ireland semi-final. Limerick still nearly came back and grabbed a draw out of it. Okay, a controversial thing with the 65, but Limerick fans said, look, we didn't deserve it and whatever else. And thankfully that was the attitude from the management and players as well. It shouldn't have been left down to a decision like that. And then the last 2 years, it's just been a roller coaster of epic performance when they really need, and it's been very noticeable. And John Keogh, for me, says this really every time us journalists or whoever else is talking to him. He's always on about incremental improvements. So that's a game by game. It's about performance. So don't worry about other teams. I'm sure they have things in place for other teams, but it's purely based on Limerick's performance. If the way they feel is if their performance is up to standard, as it was when it mattered in the last couple of years, they're going to be a very hard team to beat. And I'd say coming into 2022, we're going to be looking at the same thing.
Yeah, because there does seem to be consistent improvements year on year with Limerick, all right, as well. And there always seems to be more innovations in the way that they play, whether it's moving Kyle Hayes further down the pitch or changing players' positions or bringing new players in. Like it does seem like John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk are nearly like the new Kilkenny in many ways in terms of reinventing the wheel and hurling a little bit now.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think everyone in Limerick would have a fair idea, and across the country, but Limerick's most consistent 15, bar one or two places is. So I think Limerick know what they have, 1 to 20. And I think last year in the league, they blooded some players that have really come through in the pre-season, in the Munster Hurling Cup. You know, so people say, where did these guys come from? John Keogh's answer is they've been around the panel for a couple of years, so it's time they stood up. So there's a fierce battle for 1 to 15, but there's an even bigger battle going on from 16 to 35 or 36. So it's a constant thing. They're seeing guys in the Fitzgibbon Cup, you know, UL, okay, it was only Brian O'Grady was the only starter, but he had an outstanding game, and he's been outstanding from a junior club in Limerick, Kilteely Drumkeen. He's been really, really impressive, just to pick one. But across the board, like it's something like, was it 10 against Clare, 10 of the All-Ireland team that started the All-Ireland didn't play. So you had 5 starters. Now, them 5 starters, Dan Morrissey, Barry Nash, William O'Donoghue, Garrod Hegarty, you know, and you know, they're serious players. There's no point saying they're not. But some of the younger players that have got a chance initially, the likes of Brian O'Grady, as I've mentioned, Richie English has been in outstanding form so far this year. Okay, it's Kerry and Clare in a pre-season competition, but you know, he's a marker to lay down. He started the Munster final, whether it was some kind of heat stroke or something. It just didn't happen for Richie last year after coming back from a cruciate. He's been in excellent form. There's just fierce competition all over the field for these places, and every one of these guys that's getting a chance now wants to hold on to that jersey. And I think we'll see throughout the league, yeah, Limerick will get stronger and pick maybe stronger teams on paper as the league goes on. But you know, John Keogh's looking to see what he has coming up the line as well.
Yeah, and speaking of John Keogh there as well, like you mentioned, obviously his influence when he's come into the team as manager back in 2017. Like, what would you look at? I suppose some of the big changes he's maybe made, because even going back to 2015 and 2016, like there has obviously been some new additions to the Limerick team and some younger players that have broken through, but a lot of the same players are still there, like the likes of your Dan Morrisseys, your Nicky Quays, like a lot of the same players have still been there that were there maybe when the days weren't so good. So what do you think John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk, I suppose, changed fundamentally quite early on with Limerick?
I don't think there was a huge change fundamentally. I think it was just getting everyone's house in order. I mean, it'd be wrong of me to say organisation, because TJ Ryan had good organisation in place and John Allen did before him. But something clicked, and I think John Keogh will say this as well. He wouldn't be able to do his job without all the other pieces being in place. So there's a lot of trust involved between Kinnerk and Kiely. I think that's massive. And that trust is then put back into the players. I remember when they did win the Munster Senior League in 18, start of 18, and basically, like, Limerick had got on in an All-Ireland run, club run, lost to Coola after a replay in the club final. And a lot of people expected the majority of the Limerick players to come back into that Limerick team. Well, it didn't happen. Guys that played in a very cold, dark night, December 30th, 2017, against Cork and Mallow, the likes of Tom Morrisseys, the likes of Seamus Flanagan, Graham Mulcahy has had more resurrections than Jesus at this stage. You know, people have written him off so much, and he was starting in that case. The general consensus, sure, they won't be near the team championship. Majority of them lads, Aaron Gillana, even at that stage, he'd had a great Fitzgibbon in 17, had kind of come through, came on against Kilkenny in that game in Nolan Park, and had a good league in 18, but you're still kind of saying early on that year, would he be keeping his place? Well, Dowling has come back, Kevin Downs, you know, all these guys from the Pierce, and all of a sudden, the majority of them players that played against Cork ended up playing in an All-Ireland final 6-7 months later, you know. So I think there's a lot of trust between players and management, which isn't always the case in any team, whether it be a club team, county team, or anything else. So I think that was the starting blocks in 17. Obviously, the game plan changed with a possession-based play, where Limerick traditional hurling would have been deliver it long into the big man, into the full forward line, which in recent years was Brian Begley or someone else of that ilk. And that was the plan, and play off that and give it blood and thunder for 70 minutes and see where we go. Very memorable game in 15, I think it was 15, when there was a downpour against Kilkenny up in Croke Park, you know, and a memorable game, but just Shane Dowling was inches away from getting a goal, which could have seen Limerick over the line. But that was the type of play. Kinnerk changed everything game plan wise. There's no question about that. But he had success with Clare underage, and then bringing it through to an All-Ireland in 13 was very quickly transformed into Limerick. And I remember at the time, Declan Hannon and the likes of them said, yeah, we knew it was going to be a process, what we were trying, even though it wasn't fully working. It was a case of sticking with that process. And I think Limerick have done that. And that trust builds from that. I mean, when you have success fairly quickly, I mean, the trust builds and builds and builds. And, you know, each one of these guys, look, the All-Stars thing is always a debate, and rightly a debate between people. But like, there's people in Limerick and outside Limerick wondering why Dan Morrissey and Aaron Gillane didn't get on that team as well. And you're after having 12 All-Stars. That's how dominant they are at the moment. But I the way I think of it is a trust thing, where the faith was put into the players by management. The game plan, this is the game plan. You have to implement it, and we'll go from here. And, you know, it's worked to a T.
Yeah, I suppose the coup of Paul Kinnerk really is a big thing with Limerick, I think, like, because when you've seen obviously the influence he's had with the Clare hurlers and even with the Limerick footballers as well, like, I mean, it seems that his addition was probably something that has been a huge addition for Limerick, and even some of the notable changes in different games as well, at water breaks and whatnot. Like, it seems to have him alongside John Keogh, I mean, that's just a huge addition, and probably one of maybe the best management teams across the entirety of GAA, LGFA, you know, all codes of GAA, really.
Yeah, I think so. It's just, you know, it's just worked. You know, Paul was a Limerick footballer from City Club Monaleen, renowned teacher in Flanagan's, and it became very apparent very quickly that he had something. You hear all the Clare players talk about him after their success in 13. You know, there's just something. I've spoken to people that have learned under him. Obviously, players and stuff talk about him, but coaches that he's teaching within Limerick GAA, and it's just a completely different outlook on the way of things. The problem solving, you know, problem-solving way of looking at things. So this is your problem. You have 5 or 6 minutes to figure it out. Within training, this is now. And then, okay, after that 5 or 6 minutes, he'll pull it aside. This is what you're doing wrong. This is how you fix it. So it's up to, the onus is very much put back on the players from what I gather within it, and that every single person I've ever heard talk about Paul Kinnerk says the same things, so he has this coaching mind that he's able to get across. And I think it comes from an educational background as well. It's very much, it's a thought process that every little thing that Limerick do, there's thought behind it. And yeah, there's freedom within that process, no question about it. But, the proof is in the pudding with his success as a coach at inter-county level. And, let Limerick people be hoping he can stay on for as long as he can. But I think Paul Kinnerk has serious ambitions for coaching-wise, and it may not always be with Limerick. I think you could be looking elsewhere, different codes and different things. But it is a marriage made in heaven. And I will emphasise, John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk, great, but they are backed up by a very, very good background team, coaching team with them. Like I said, Angus O'Brien, Alan Cunningham, Donald O'Grady, Caroline Curran, Timmy Hoole, and of course, next Limerick goalie as well, taking charge of the keepers. It's very fluid and it's worked very well.
Yeah, and given his background with the footballers, do you think you could ever see him maybe involved with the Limerick footballers in any ways? Maybe not anytime soon, but at some point in the future?
I don't know. He's heavily involved in the Limerick Underage Football Academy. He set it up a few years ago, even before he come back to the hurlers. I don't know. Anything's possible, Aaron. He certainly has something in him, I think, that may push beyond coaching and into management, maybe at a professional level in different sports and different codes. You're seeing Jim McGuinness, look, still, I know he gives a hand with certain teams at certain times within GAA still, but he's still really pushing the soccer thing for him. And I think you might, and this is purely my opinion now, you might see Paul Kinnerk follow down a similar road, but certainly if he ever does decide to leave Limerick, he'll be very well sought after.
Yeah, 100%, no doubt about that. Like we seen even, Davy Fitz and a lot of the Clare hurlers as well talk about how they probably shouldn't have let him go, and they should have probably kept him at the helm with Clare. But looking back at that performance in the final against Cork last year, I mean, probably one of the best All-Ireland final performances potentially ever seen in hurling, maybe even across all of GAA. I think it was 3-19 in the first half against Cork, and Cork are a good team as well. We've seen what they done throughout the year. So, I mean, I'd imagine watching a performance like that, I'd say it was mind-blowing in many ways.
The first half, second half, the game was kind of over, barred some kind of miracle. But as Limerick fans, we remember Offaly in '94. So, I mean, it's never over till it's over. But yeah, it was something to behold. The early goal, you're thinking, geez, we're away here. But Cork responding, but Limerick didn't bat an eyelid to Cork's goal, really. It just kept hammering home. And look, there was naivety in Cork as well to leave. I mean, Seamus Flanagan there and Gillan in there on their own, basically, with 2-on-2. It just, Limerick caught them on the hop, definitely. Cork seemed like a deer or a rabbit caught in headlights for the early stages of that game and just weren't able to recover. But it was clinical from Limerick. It really was. And that's where I come back to the incremental improvement. The last 2 years, certainly, Limerick have been ready for that final. It was Waterford in 2020, of course, with no one there in the midst of COVID and everything. But the first 35 minutes against Cork was something I haven't seen from any team. Kilkenny blitzed Limerick. Of course, Kilkenny blitzed Waterford a few years ago as well throughout the game. But it was just so clinical. And Peter Casey having an exceptional 4 or 5 points from play before he did his cruciate. And what was going to be one of the great All-Ireland performances by the looks of it. And then Cian Lynch takes a hold of the game after that and gives an epic performance himself. So it was great to watch, but I think anyone on that team will tell you that it wasn't as easy as it may have looked. Cork are a serious team. A lot of people before that game felt Cork were going to have the run on Limerick in the Munster Championship earlier in the year. That Nicky Quaid penalty save changed that whole game. Cork could have been 8 or 9 points up at halftime. You could have been looking at a completely different championship, but they're primed to be ready for when it really matters. And my God, did they really pull it off on the day? Look, all over the park, they were just dominant in Cork. And I think it was reflected in the All-Stars after that, but it was reflective that this isn't a surprise for Limerick players, that they know how good they are, number one. Number two, they know they have a short window and they're very intent on winning as much as they can when they can in the next couple of years. And it was evident after the game, a number of the players coming out and saying post-match interviews, yeah, that's great, it's fantastic, we've won it, we'll enjoy it, but there's next year, you know, and that's ominous for other teams, no question of that. But you know, from Limerick people's point of view, it's just great, and there's a massive fan base behind it. We've seen that over the last few weeks. There's more Limerick fans in Ennis last Sunday for the Munster League final, or Munster Cup final in the pre-season competition, and then there was Clare fans, more Limerick people, and there was 5,000 the week before in the Gaelic grounds for the Kerry game as well. And it's just, there's a massive appetite for people wanting to get to games anyway. But you know that there's certainly a huge amount of backing supporters wise in this team, and you know, long may it continue from our point of view.
Yeah, there seems to be a huge amount of hunger in that Limerick team as well, like all across, you know, 1 to 15, and obviously the bench and the options they have there as well, because like what you said there, like they don't seem to be letting up at all, and you know, they've won 2 in a row, and I'm sure they're going to be fully focused now to go on and do 3 in a row. Like, and even at times watching that game against Cork as well, like they didn't really show any mercy at all, or any respect in the first half. Like it was relentless, really. Like, and when you see them play like that, you would wonder, really, can anyone catch them this year at all, or is anyone even going to be close to catching them? Because like it's scary in many ways, because it's nearly similar in some ways to the Dublin footballers, maybe like in 2015, 2016, where you were looking at them and thinking, you know, they're actually getting way better, and you didn't think they could get better. So it's, I suppose, brilliant from a Limerick point of view, but for everyone else, they're probably looking at it and thinking, you know, how are we going to close this gap?
Yeah, like the one thing I'll say about the final as well, Limerick aren't as good as that every day, and Cork aren't as bad as that every day. So somewhere in the middle, the reality between the two teams. And I think on any given day, you know, Limerick took the league last year in trying to blood and find some new players. You know, there was a short turnaround from winning the All-Ireland in December to being out in the league fairly quickly after that, in early February, I think it was. So the way the championship worked, it didn't really, the league wasn't a priority. It'll be interesting to see what John Keogh does with the league this year as well, and especially with the Fitzgibbon Cup going on over the first couple of games of that as well. I think, yeah, Limerick will undoubtedly be strong favourites to win their 3rd title in a row, and I take on board the comparison with that Dublin team as well. But you're always one game away, one bad game away, and one bad half away from everything falling to pieces. They had an average performance against Cork. The first half against Tipperary really showed that maybe there is a way you can get to Limerick teams, although they closed it up very quickly in the second half. And I think Limerick put that first half performance down to Limerick not doing what they should have been doing, rather than Tipperary doing what they were doing. But yeah, the challenge has been laid down to all the other counties. This is where Limerick are at. You know, that there is a formidable, you know, you look at Limerick and, okay, they've fantastic hurlers, but they're, from a physical point of view, Limerick can play it any way you want. If you want to mix it, they can mix it. If you want to hurl, they can hurl. That's the scary proposition. How do you break down this Limerick team? You look at a guy like Dan Morrissey that you mentioned. Like Dan was an outstanding wing back in 18, you know, and due to injuries in 20, he was forced back into a full back position, which hadn't worked out for him in previous, a couple of championship games against Westmeath and Tipperary back in 2015-16. That didn't look like Dan. That was certainly not going to be his position. Barry Nash in 2015 was an All-Ireland under-21 winning corner forward, you know, and converted back to a corner back. So these things seem to have been a weakness for Limerick, turned into that they were able to turn it into a strength. But from all the other counties' point of view, yeah, Limerick look in a strong position again, but you can be sure, I certainly look at it, and I think Galway over the last 2 years, and okay, a poor year last year, but a 2020, that semi-final could have went either way. With Shane O'Neill's first year in Galway, albeit his second year didn't work out so well. And Henry Shefflin will certainly bring something to that Galway setup as well. Kilkenny are going to be strong. I think Cork, as chastening as that defeat was for Limerick in the All-Ireland final last year, they have to do something in response to that. And it's interesting that the first championship game that they will come up is in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, you know, in April. It's going to be a helter-skelter game. But across the board, look, Tipperary will be better again next year, you'd imagine. There's a lot of changes going on with Cullen Bonner inside in that squad. A couple of the older guys, Brendan Maher gone. A lot of young blood being introduced in the league, I'm sure, for Tipperary as well. And from what I've seen in the Fitzgibbon Cup so far, there's plenty of talent in Tip, and it's just about harnessing that talent. But Waterford under Liam Cahill have been very impressive for 2 years. But again, I'll go back to Limerick will concentrate on Limerick. And, it's up to everyone else to knock them off their perch, for want of a better phrase. And it's going to be a very difficult thing to do if Limerick are right, which I presume they will be come championship time, certainly.
Yeah, and looking at that performance against Tipperary, like 10 points down at half time, I mean, it looked really like Tipperary were home and hosed in many ways. Like, I think a lot of people probably felt, given Tipperary's quality, that they were probably going to get the better of Limerick. But again, like, that almost seemed to be like a real turning point last year, because I suppose up until then, like what you said before, when they played Cork in that Munster Championship, probably not at their absolute best and probably rotated quite a lot throughout the league. But it did seem that Tipperary second half, whatever John Keogh said to them at half time, and Paul Kinnerk, they came out all guns blazing, and you obviously had that Kyle Hayes goal as well, and they just completely blew Tipperary out of the water in the second half. Like, it wasn't really much of a contest, and actually not only did they turn that around, but they won the game comfortably. So I mean, it did seem that Tipperary sort of half-time moment was probably like a key turning point for Limerick last year.
Oh, I think so, 100%. Listening to John Keogh after the game, it was very much, we were off a few percent, and if you're off a few percent in white heat of Munster Championship or Championship action, you're going to be caught. Tipperary were outstanding in that first half. But from Limerick's point of view, they were let be outstanding. It was noticeable in the first few minutes, even before Seamus Flanagan's goal and even before the Aaron Gillan incident, Limerick were a lot tighter marking. Tipperary weren't winning ball easy, and then the tide turned once that Seamus Flanagan goal went in. Cian Lynch started winning puckouts. I think Cian Lynch was carrying an injury in that second half as well, which really shows how good he is and can be. But all over the park, they just started beating their men to the ball. And that Kyle Hayes goal is probably a symbol for the whole year. It was just, and Tipperary people, and if you're going to be cynical about things, he should never have been able to run that far. But he did, and then the finish. But yeah, it was awesome. If you remember that day as well, the Sunday afternoon, it was 30 degrees. It was unbelievable heat, and maybe there was an element of Limerick's fitness helping them as well. They're a supremely fit team, like all intercounty teams are, but it was certainly a turning point in the season. After that, you were into a semi-final, which they fairly dispatched Waterford with relative. Waterford gave a good first quarter, and Limerick just blew them away after that. Once Aaron Gillan's goal went in, it was long over then, and obviously the final. But there are going to be things. Peter Casey, like midsummer, you're looking at after his ACL. He's had the operation I think in November, so you're still looking a good 8-9 months out. So he may not be available for championship. That opens the door for someone else. Could be looking at the likes of Cathal O'Neill, a very talented underage player for Limerick the last few years, and he's been thereabouts on the bench. Colin Coughlin was a guy who impressed last year, certainly impressed in the early stages this season too. You've Adam English, who's only 19 this year and was only under 20s last year and minor the year before. So you still have talent coming through Limerick's underage teams in the last few years that will be pushing. You've guys like Pat Ryan, who's always done well when introduced as a substitute, will be looking to maybe nail down a place. You've Barry Murphy, who's back on the panel last year, unfortunately has done his cruciate again. So you're looking at places, competition for places, I mentioned it earlier, is rife with that Limerick team, and it's only going to be the same this year. But going back to your initial point, that Tipperary game could have went a different way. You could have been looking at Limerick, they could have got a bad draw in the qualifiers after that, and who knows, but they were able to pull it around, and that's just the mark of the team. They didn't panic, which I think is the biggest thing at this Limerick. They don't panic when they're in a situation. I think they learned so much from that loss to Kilkenny in 19 that really, really looked. I mean, they blew Tipperary away in the Munster final in the Gaelic grounds that day. It was just awesome stuff, similar to what they did against Cork and what they've done to other teams in recent times. But they were caught by Kilkenny, and the next 2 years I think have been about, okay, we know what happened that day, we knew how that happened and why it happened, let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's not to say it won't happen again. They're not going to win every game in the championship for the next 2 or 3 years, but as I said, the players know they have a window of opportunity to win things given their talent, and they've every intent in taking up that challenge.
Yeah, and you mentioned that 2019 defeat to Kilkenny, and I think a lot of people that I've spoke to probably look at that defeat maybe in similar light to when Dublin lost to Donegal in 2014, and then how Dublin reevaluated a bit after that, made a few tweaks and changes, and really went on to dominate Gaelic football for the next 6 years. So like with Limerick and some of the underage players coming through, like Cathal O'Neill and Adam English and a few other lads, like you mentioned before, and given the fact that Limerick are so far ahead, could you see Limerick maybe not necessarily doing the 6 in a row or emulating the Dubs, but really, I suppose, like their best place to really be the dominant force in hurling, not just for the next 3 or 4 years, but possibly even beyond?
Yeah, because it's hard to say. It's hard to look into the future like that. Many things could happen in between now and then. More importantly, like management teams can break up. I mean, Kilkenny have been blessed, and Dublin were blessed to have Jim Galvin when they had him, or Jim Gavin when they had him as well. You know, that's a big thing. John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk are in for this season, next season. That's the latest deals they signed towards the end of last year. You know, and that could be it for them too. You just don't know what can happen from there. But from a player point of view, it's the age profile is the thing with Limerick. You know, you do have, like, there's Nicky Quaid, Graham Mulcahy, that played the All Ireland last year, that are over 30. You know, you've Declan Hannon's 28. Given Declan Hannon's, like, it seems like he's been around forever at this stage, but he's still relatively young. He's like, say, Declan will be 29 this year. Garrod Hegarty, 27, 28. Keane Lynch, 26. Kyle Hayes, younger than that again. And these are guys not even hit, maybe arguably not hit their prime yet. So that's the scariest thing over the next 2 or 3 years. After that, look, it's very, very hard to know. But I will go back to saying that the competition for places underneath. Like I said, I've seen Fitzgibbon Cup this year. I saw UCC versus Mary I a couple of weeks ago. And there was 5 Limerick lads in that UCC team. You had 2 Boylans, Jerome and Conor Boylan, that are on the panel. Ronan Connolly is on the panel. You know, you'd William Henn from the Piercing as well, a very talented young hurler that isn't part of the Limerick panel, and Kieran Barry from the Han Club in East Limerick, who isn't part of the Limerick panel either. But my point being is, these are guys that can't make the Limerick panel that are starting in Fitzgibbon Cup teams. So the talent is all around the country at the moment. You've a lot of, maybe not even the Limerick colleges, but UCC having 5 starters, you know, is a big thing. Obviously, Keane Lynch has gone back to NUIG to do his masters, you know, but they're playing at a high level is what I'm saying. And so when they do come back into Limerick, they're already primed. They're already ready to go for a league campaign in the next few weeks as well. And these are guys that are on the fringes, so, you know, that are pushing constantly. And that's like Kilkenny had back in the day, and like Dublin had in recent years with the football as well. I think that's what breeds success, is having a guy, knowing you every time you go out to training, the guy you're marking is pushing for a place on the team. And that's very much the case in Limerick. They have a very, very healthy, competitive nature between themselves. And from what I gather, it goes fairly hard. There are scuffles, there are little disagreements that get ironed out, but I mean, would any other intercounty team want it any other way? You know, that's what you want, fellas driving each other on. And that's why I go back to saying again, yeah, people might know Limerick's 1 to 15, but 16 to 35 and 36 are pushing just as hard to either make the team or make the bench as well. Because remember, there's 10 on the panel on any given day that don't even get the tag out, you know. So that I think that's the Limerick's biggest trend. And over the next few years, given their age profile, yeah, and that's why I come back and saying as well, they know they have a window over the next 2, 3, maybe 5 years if we're stretching it, but they're hell bent on earning more success, and they're not even fairly, they're very committed. I mean, even through COVID, you'd pockets of players living together. I'm not sure how well known that is. So they were in their own bubbles, even going to train and even living together where possible, of course. Like, so that shows the level of dedication that they do have to it, that they're even willing to get into that stage of living together and just foregoing a lot of personal, like everyone did, I know, but you know, they're just so impressive every time you go out into the pitch in championship at the moment, that it's just hard to see any team right now. That could change very quickly. It's hard to see any team beating them at the moment.
Yeah, how might they approach the league then, do you think, this year? Like, do you think there'll be much rotation, I suppose, in similar ways to last year? Because obviously it did take them quite a while to get up to speed last year, and I suppose there was a short turnover between league and championship from 2020. So how do you think Limerick will approach the league this year?
I think it'll be mixed. I think over the next couple of weeks, given there's, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 maybe at the panel playing Fitzgibbon Cup. A lot of them have played during the Munster Cup as well, pre-season competition. They've married the Fitzgibbon Cup with that, but and you've, as I said, Garrod Hegarty and Will O'Donoghue starting that game as well, along with Dan Morrissey and Barry Nash, and Sean Finn was back on the bench for that as well. So slowly, I think it'll be slowly introducing them, but the other thing is there's a very short window, as you mentioned, again this year with league and championship, and Limerick weren't up to scratch in that Cork game. They looked a bit rough around the edges, and I think John Keogh and Paul Kinnerk will be fairly keen for that not to happen again. So as it goes on, depending on the level of Fitzgibbon Cup, you know, players play still involved in that come next week, this weekend and next weekend, that'll be over fairly quickly. So you could see it fairly slowly drifting players that started last year into things. Declan Hannon hasn't been seen yet with Limerick. Cian Lynch hasn't been around. Darragh O'Donovan hasn't been around. You know, these types of players, they'll be introduced back fairly quickly. And the likes of Seamus Flanagan was back on the bench over the weekend as well. So, you know, yeah, I think it'll be more hybrid look. They'll still look at the players they did last year, but it'll be purely, I think, down again. Limerick have won their couple of national leagues that helped win Munster and helped lead to All-Ireland success. John Keogh will get what he wants out of the league, you can be sure. And I'd say it'll be hybrid, getting players ready for championship and still giving players a chance to impress. So for when they're needed, they're able to draft in straight away. David Reid is a prime example. He's in ridiculous form. 114 against Kerry in the first game of that pre-season competition, and then 12 points against Clare last week. Yeah, a lot of them coming from frees, but he's popping over points from play. And it's very interesting to see it with David Reedy as well. He's usually the first player brought on the forwards when Limerick make a change. So he shows how close he is to the starting team as well. But again, that Limerick half forward line, who comes out? You know, Tom Morrissey, Cian Lynch, Gerard Hegarty, you could argue it's one for the ages already. And they're 3 All-Irelands in, but Cian Lynch's switch in 2020 from midfield to there has opened the door for Darragh O'Donovan. Took his chance very well, but there's no room for resting on their laurels in this Limerick setup. So anyone who's out of form or not up to scratch for when they need to be will be told in no uncertain terms, fix it, or there's someone there to come in. So he's coming back to that. But to finish on it, yeah, I think it'll be more hybrid. It'll depend on availability of what the senior players will or what senior players will play when. But yeah, I think it'll be looking very much towards championship and using the league as a platform to get ready for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned there as well, like obviously with the championship coming up, obviously it's going to be a Munster round robin this time around this year, and you're looking at it and you're thinking it's almost harsh on two teams having to miss out there and not make it through past Munster, because you've probably got, 5 really, really high quality teams in there. It's extremely hard to predict. So I'd imagine for Limerick, for John Keogh, for Paul Kinnerk, like they'll want the lads to be ready for that Munster round robin, because it's going to be extremely tough to get out of there. Like you're looking at, like it's very hard to even predict at this stage as well, the two teams that are going to miss out. Like you nearly feel bad for the two teams that are going to miss out, because I suppose there's no doubt about that Munster is definitely the province at the minute that has far more amount of quality as opposed to Leinster.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to call. Cork will have a lot to prove in that game first up, and they'll definitely have earmarked that the second the fixtures come out and were organised. Clare, looking at them last week, they more than anyone else, I think, in Munster have a lot to do. Just they're trying to blood players, and Brian Lohan has to try and find more and more players, albeit they were without Tony Kelly. But that was a strong Clare team against the Limerick team that were mixing and matching in a lot of ways. But yeah, you look at Waterford, they've got Liam Cahill opting to stay. It meant to many people's surprise, that's having been supposedly been offered the tip job and has decided to stay with Waterford for another year. Certainly it's his final option of another year he took. I think Waterford will be strong again. I think they could surprise a few people this year. And then you have Tipperary as well. So I mean, you're looking, it is going to be hell for leather, and it's the beauty. We had it for 2 years in 18 and 19. It was fantastic to see so many games and so many tight games as well. So many, yeah, there was the odd blowout in games here where teams weren't just right on the day. But even at that, the Leinster Championship has massive potential this year. That Galway-Kilkenny game for me stands out a mile already. That is, it's Cody versus Shefflin. It's Cody or Shefflin versus Kilkenny. And so many players so well. Still a good few he played with, as well as obviously guys he soldier with Ballyhale. But yeah, back to Munster, it's wide open. It really is. I don't think. I'm not sure about Tipperary. It could be a building year for Tipperary. So you're looking at maybe Limerick, Cork, and Waterford fighting it out. And that's not you could never discount Clare, Tipperary, and anything. Of course you couldn't. It's just you're looking at probably on form, certainly from last year. You're looking at them 3 to come through anyway. And maybe the other 2 that will miss out, but that could turn around. It could be 100% Tipperary, Clare, and one of the others as well. It is, as you said, wide open. But Limerick navigated well in 18 and 19. They got through 18 fairly well. But the one thing, the Cork one is a real interesting one for me. Like, Cork, they rightly would have hurt. It'll be interesting to see how Cork approach the league as well, given what happened at the end of 2022 or 2021 for them. Sorry, that they know what they have now player wise. And how can they improve on that? Mark Coleman, is he a better centre back or is he a better wing back? Robert Downey's been outstanding at centre back and wing back in the Fitzgibbon so far this year. Just watching him. Jack O'Connor's coming back from injury. Conor Cahalane has been very impressive for UCC as well. And I know you can only marry Fitzgibbon Cup form, completely different level when you step up to inter-county as well, of course. But from Limerick's point of view, they know what they have in it. There will be changes each game. They've approached that the same way in 18, 19. They had the ability when they played Tipperary in 19 in Thurles that they knew they were already through, to a Munster final before they played that game, and they mixed and matched the team and Tip won comfortable enough, and then Limerick blitzed them in the Munster final. So from my point of view, it's just fantastic that we're back to that round robin championship in both Munster and Leinster. I think it's been a massive lift for the GAA. Attendances have been up, interest in the hurling has been up from that. It's continued in 2020 and 2021 for different reasons with COVID and everything, but having the round robin back, and I'll always look back to that epic game between Limerick and Cork in 18 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Kyle Hayes' point in the last seconds at a time, 14-man Limerick getting a draw, and that propelled Limerick on further, through the qualifiers, fair enough, but didn't contest the Munster final. But then that epic game against Cork, and there's rivalries that are naturally there in the provinces anyway. That Kilkenny Galbo one really growing with each year, but I think Limerick Cork is the big one in Munster this year, and I think we're lucky enough it's first up. It'll whet the appetite great for a great season.
Yeah, because it's interesting because Cork are obviously a fairly young team as well with some of the players that they brought in there. So I suppose that probably has the makings, maybe Limerick and Cork, of a big rivalry, a long-standing rivalry really now over the next 5 to 10 years. Because I suppose there has always been a bit of a rivalry between Limerick and Cork down the years, but obviously you wouldn't have played each other in big, significant games through the years when Cork were obviously dominating, Limerick weren't. So I mean, them two going at it over the next 10 years or so, like especially with the age profile of the players and the underage success and whatnot, like the Limerick-Cork rivalry potentially has the bearings of maybe being the next sort of Kilkenny-Tipperary rivalry or what that was a couple of years ago. So that could be very fascinating to watch over the next couple of years.
Yeah, 100%, Aaron. It's, I keep saying it, like Cork people thought they were going to win that All-Ireland. There's no point saying otherwise. They were really going up with confidence. And they had every reason to have confidence. They won an epic semi-final with Kilkenny, and it really was, we're here now and this is it. They have serious talent all over the field. They have serious talent coming through. I've mentioned Jack O'Connor, you've Shane Barrett, Shane Kingston, when he's on form, is just a freak the way he can play. Patrick Horgan's still knocking about as well, who will take scores all day long. You give him half an inch, he'll score. And, they've Conor Lahan back on the panel now for 2022. He's a big addition. When he's hot as well, the same thing. But Cork's biggest problem is going to be consistency. And that's all they're missing. That's all I think they're missing anyway. Maybe a bit more physicality in their forward line as well on top of that, but it's consistency for Cork. They were able to put off that brilliant performance against Kilkenny and work their way through the competition last year after losing to Limerick. But it is that consistency that Kieran Kingston will be thriving for this year, along with Dermot O'Sullivan. So, yeah, I see it as a big-time rival, and with Tipperary trying to blood more youngsters this year. Limerick and Tipperary, look, Munster's so tight anyway between the counties that they're all nearly bordering each other, that it is that kind of, it is basically parochial from time to time, a lot of the times. And, I remember it with Limerick and Tipperary in the early noughties and mid noughties, like with that epic three in a row games in 07. But Niall Moran playing against Owen Kelly, first cousins, and that kind of parochial stuff is always there in Munster, and it is there in Leinster as well, of course, all over the country. But But yeah, the Limerick Cork thing, it really has the makings. It kind of started. Remember, there was a challenge game in Limerick between the two in 17, and it was actually up in my own club, my own local club. It was on, and there was serious bite in that game in 17 that led to things in 18, to the two epic games in 18. Cork beat Limerick in 19 when Limerick were coming back from their first game as All-Ireland champions in the Munster Championship, and Cork won that game. And it was a big kick in the backside for Limerick that day. And you obviously had last year as well, the two games last year. So, it's a burgeoning rivalry that has the makings of being the long-standing one. But you can be sure Waterford, Tip and Clare will have something to say about that this year and for the next few years. Tipperary have a lot of good talent coming through. Clare maybe that little bit behind. It's going to be interesting to see what Waterford have. You've seen Michael Kiely, one of their younger players coming through again in that UL Fitzgibbon team, and looks a real talent. Of course, they've Austin Gleeson, they've talent all over the park. I think for Waterford this year, it's more the same from their point of view, maybe harnessing a little bit more from the Bennetts, and they could be in a good position. And then you go back like Galway and Wexford even. Wexford are a fascinating one for Limerick this weekend with Darragh Egan in charge. It's going to be very different from what Davy brought, but they've played well in the pre-season stuff so far, so they're going to be an interesting proposition as well. In Dublin, look at Matty Kenny. It's his third year in charge, I think, is it? And, they're going to... It's kind of hit or bust at this stage for them under Matty. Like, he's done a lot of good work behind the scenes, I know that, within the Dublin setup, but they need to make a move this year as well.
100%, yeah. Like, and what's the verdict then? Do you think you're back in Limerick anyway to go all the way this year and win the All Ireland again? I suppose it would be. I suppose you'd nearly be crazy not to at this stage.
Yeah, from a neutral hat on, I'll say that. From neutral's point of view, it's very hard to see past Limerick. I'll take my bias out of it for a change, but we think things are very, very good down here. We're very confident, but Limerick aren't going to count their chickens. But it's very hard to look past Limerick, Kilkenny, Galway, and maybe Cork again in them four teams, yet again this year. And from Limerick's point of view, it's hard to look past. There isn't any major changes. There was no retirements. There was no one leaving the panel from what we know. That was John Keogh hasn't finalised his full panel as of yet. He might do so this week ahead of the league, and it's there's fluidity in that panel anyway as well. But yeah, it is very hard to see past Limerick, judging on last year's form, 2020 form, and even early on in the pre-season competition with a lot of fringe players getting their chance. You're just seeing maybe the strength Limerick have underneath as well. So it's very hard to see past Limerick.
Perfect, John. Well, look, listen, I appreciate you jumping on anyways, and sure, look, listen, enjoy the year ahead for Limerick anyways, because I suppose from a neutral point of view anyways, I can't really see anyone stopping them this year. So it looks to be another brilliant year ahead for Limerick fans.
Cheers, Aaron.